A Gwanwyn, the springtime. And that's really what we're talking about in this video. When the Norman French invaded our country, we withstood them in a way that England did not. We survived, but we were forever changed. And it created a cultural renaissance, fusing Welsh with French. And so that's what this video is about today. This is ben.llywelyn, and we're going to go with you up a little forested river valley as I talk that through with you in this video. But first, lunch. Salmon sandwich. Look at these flowers. The Normans, erupting out of the north of France, sweeping over England and crashing into Wales, made us a European people. They ripped Wales out of the Celtic, Scandinavian world, of the Irish Sea, and fused it with Latin Europe. They brought feudalism, the baron and his knights, castles and manors, fine wine, new clothes, new styles, architecture, ornate manuscripts. They brought the first glimpses of large-scale farming, towns, trade, and at last a finance-run economy. They brought the European church, European monasteries, and they brought chivalry and the literature of Europe up from the troubadours. In response, we Welsh exploded, blooming in self-aspiration, self-expression, renewal, carving out a distinct polity of our own, entering European politics. And for a couple generations we were on the verge of forming a feudal state centered around Gwynedd in the north. The Norman March, or the borderland, gave Europe itself the first form of what became one of its most brilliant, shining, and abundant literary traditions in the Arthurian Romantic cycle. It was through the Norman March that it came, that bustling, potent society, which was a border zone, often lawless, often seamless, often invisible, but bilingual, trilingual with Latin, French, and Welsh in places. This line became the opening up of two Wales, which can still be seen today along the boundaries of where Plaid Cymru has been successful in recent elections. In our own day, that shadow line exists. It comes out, looming out of the mist and fog, in Welsh history, in trends, in the roots of communities, and it has persisted for 8 centuries, this cultural division, a testimony to the sheer force, not only of the Norman invasions, but of our ability to respond to it and push back. It was a frontier. From the beginning, brides as well as raiders crossed the border. The Church of the European Papacy rode over it. Practices flowed both ways. New kinds of civilization emerged. New species of people, as much Welsh as Norman, French. Families on both sides, interwed, intermeshed, interacted and combated with each other. Pulsing up from the Welsh people, no matter which rulers sway over us. This line has come up again and again of an irreducible Welsh identity, one of history's miracles. Should I build a dam and try and cross with my gear? Do you think I'll get wet? Let's go have a see. In 1163, during a big military campaign into the south, Henry II, ruler of a vast European Angevin empire from the lowlands of Scotland to the Pyrenees in France, invaded into Wales and asked an old Welshman of Pencader who had joined his army, what their chances were of victory, and the old man of Pencader said, "My lord king, this nation may now be harassed, weakened and decimated by your soldiery, as it has so often been by others in former times, but it will never be destroyed by the wrath of man. Whatever else may come to pass, I do not think that on the day of judgment, any race other than the Welsh, or any other language, will give answer to the supreme judge of all for this small corner of the earth." Gerall Gymro was a member of this new Norman-French fusion, descended from Welsh royalty and Norman aristocracy. He campaigned for the Celtic Church to survive. It was perhaps a futile struggle, but he gave us such beautiful writing, and this shines through in his description of Wales, Descriptio Cambriae.
Well, I got back across, and as you can see, I'm relatively dry, no major falls. Yes, but it's not really worth taking my gear over there because the better view is actually over here, as you'll see a bit downriver. Let's go.
In his time, even in that 12th century, we can see the Pura Walia, Welsh Wales, opposed to the March, which would eventually become British Wales. This line had formed, it had hardened, even by that time, and it continues to this day. One feature of that frontier are the castles of Wales, and the architecture around them, abbeys, monasteries. The Celtic Church was abolished, its classi put into ruin or fused and absorbed, assimilated into the new Norman French architecture, and built upward in lofty arches. Wales was attacked by a series of lords seeking to advance their position in a hierarchy vastly more advanced, structurally and politically, than ours. This was a juggernaut, 200 years ahead of us in terms of political structure and capacity. They came in as adventurers, building wooden forts, then strengthening them into stone towers, then expanding them into the great monolithic, tyrannical castles you see across our country. They built them in rings around Welsh cwmudau, and they advanced cwmud by cwmud, cwmot by cwmot, marrying into families to advance their position, to slowly, valley by valley, mountain by mountain, advance further into our country. And once in, they introduced manners, exotic animals, new plants, new forms of cooking. They brought in populations, the Flemish, peoples from beyond not just England, Brittany, France, present-day Belgium. This was a polyglot community, multilingual across huge swaths of Wales, and these people were assimilated slowly into the Welsh culture and language. But in the upland, these were the lowlands that these peoples were brought into. These were the lowlands that most of these Norman lordships held. In the uplands, the laws of Hwla and the Welsh way held, birthing a society of free men. It made us more independent that we held on to the uplands and were unable to be fully conquered, carved in us a passion for liberty. And our kings, Rhys ap Tewdwr and Gruffydd ap Cynan, who were the first really to hold some ground against this unstoppable wave into our country. These two lives make films about these two great men. Rhys ap Tewdwr dying in battle, and his wife being taken by the king, and his kingdom falling, all except a single heir holding the area, the fertile, lush land around Dinevor, and then reconquering it later, a large part of it anyway, under Arglwydd Rhys, who was part of a coalition with the son of Gruffydd ap Cynan in the north, who pushed back a massive invasion into Wales in the 1130s. But Gruffydd ap Cynan himself retook his kingdom from these people 3 times, fleeing to Ireland, spending time in jail, having his sons lead campaigns, to expand his kingdom, setting up a new polity, a new dynasty that would carry on for the next 250 years.
I guess I just walk that way until I find a bus. We're back in there before sundown. Yeah, I don't think I want to go back into the forest with the sun setting.
In 1154, after an English civil war ended, Henry II pushed a massive invasion into Wales, and this momentary rupturing up, a renewal of Wales, was pushed and halted, not stopped. But we were halted. We nearly reconquered most of our country. That has no equivalent whatsoever in England.
It goes back into the forest.
And this frontier line settled along that line in 1154, where the two sides came to blows. By 1170, Owain Gwynedd, the son of Gruffydd ap Cynan, and Rhagwydd Rhys of the south, that great generation who ushered in a revival, a new civilization, a new culture, fusing these two together. Both of them were dead.
When Rhys ap Tewdwr had met Gruffydd ap Cynan in a church in 1081 on the verge of the Norman onslaught, they aligned together in an alliance against usurpers, bringing back, eventually, the house of Aberfraw of Roger the Great to Gwynedd through Gruffydd ap Cynan. And he was the last breath, this gusto, this fresh wind in from the old Viking and Irish world. His dynasty, however, would intermarry with French and find itself amidst political intrigue with Norman marcher lords, and the French language becoming an everyday part of their lives, and finding ways to diplomatically outmaneuver England using French ideas. Norman, if you will. But it took root like an old tree, deep in the Welsh soil, that we still have today. And his dynasty, through Owain Gwynedd. Hey, ci bach, iawn?
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Oh, he smells my oranges. Gruffydd ap Cynan's descendants would create parks, like hunting estates in the manner of the Norman lords. This was deeply input into our society. If Wales had not been conquered as it would in the next 2 centuries, the language of the elite probably would have become French, as it was doing during this period in much of Scotland. This prestige language, this new civilization, it fed into everything in Wales. And I can't stress that enough. Oh, look at this. Look at this. The branches of these trees above me are like the new cathedrals that were built across Wales in this era. A new architecture for a new people. Ours were destroyed. Most of the Norman ones survived, at least partially. And this new emerging Welsh political state, this feudal system creating a new hierarchy, and this sunyad, this idea, sunyad, of a nation polity led by a Welsh monarch on the model of Portugal, France, England. This is really what we begin emerging into next time. I'm gonna have to get out of these woods. It gets dark quite quickly.
And I have to note that that generation of young rulers, growing up after the Norman invasion, forming an alliance, when Cyfeiliog of Powers as well, in the 1130s, this was the most brilliant generation, perhaps, that Wales has ever seen. Morgannwg, the old southern kingdom, had been erased by the family Clare, the Marcher lords who controlled that region. Powys emerged again as a kingdom and held its own ground for a while against impossible odds to the east, but it slowly split into two. Powys Wenwynwyn of the south, normally aligning with Westminster given that it had Aberhonddu to the south, and Powys Fadog normally aligning with Gwynedd and Aberfraw. In 1188, Archbishop Baldwin was able to preach the crusade and impose his will on the new cathedral churches on his grand tour through both the March and Purwalia. This shows how porous this border was between these two worlds, and the tour was made immortal by his chronicler, Gerall Gymro, and his writing gives us a glimpse, a remarkable glimpse into this world. And perhaps the most unexpected result of this smashing together of two cultures, completely at odds with one another, was the brilliant new literary culture that erupted between them. The Arthurian cycle, the tales of Merlin, the chivalry, what we think of today as being medieval romanticism, it was born here in Wales, all of it, and it was Welsh and European alike, and without a doubt, the product of a new civilization in Wales.